Here we're going to look at nested loops, and I got two examples here already coded for you. This one here is just simply going to go through and ask for the number of divisions, thinking about a company type thing, and then for each division asking for how many sales they had. And then it sits in two loops, one for each, the outer loops controlling which division we're currently working with. Then it goes in and asks for the number of sales for that division, and then the inner loop, which you see here, prompts the user for the amount of sales based on how many sales they said they had at that point. Alright, so number of sales meaning, okay, they sold 5 things. You're going to get 5 amounts that they sold for how much. Keeps a running total going for that division's total sales. Alright, and then it keeps the overall division totals. Right, so this variable here is keeping track of the running total of all the divisions of all its sales. Well, that's the number of sales, and this is keeping the total of the amount of the sales. This is figuring out the average for the current division, and then at the very end it'll figure out the average for all divisions altogether, and then I'll put that information. Right, and we're doing this with 2 loops, nested loops. So there's the start of the first for loop, and then inside that loop, right, there's the opening for the first outer loop, and then we start another for loop, and there's its opening and closing curly brackets for the inner loop, and a little bit farther down there's the closing curly bracket for the outer loop. Alright, so that's what we call a nested loop. This is the inner loop, this one here, the smaller one, and then the bigger loop, right, we call the outer loop, right, controlling divisions. Right, so those are nested loops. It's just a loop inside of another loop. Right, and we're going to run through this. I'm going to run through it once, just running the program, showing you the inputs, and then I'm going to step through it so you see step by step how these loops are actually working. Alright, so I ask for number of divisions. We'll go simple with just 2 divisions. Number of sales in division 0, and we'll just say just 2, and we'll put amount of 1 and 1. Then for the next division, right, how many sales? 2 there also. First was 2 and the second one was 2. Alright, and you can see the total sales was 2 up here for the first one, which is correct, and then the average is a 1. Right? 2 divided by 2 is 1. Then here I had, for the second division, I had 2 for each of the sales that they had, which is a total of 4 for sales. Not formatted, this is all in dollars and stuff, but we didn't format it that far. And then the average for that division was 2. The overall, which is the 4 plus the 2, is 6. The total sales of 4 altogether, which means we had a total average sale of 1.5. Right? In other words, $1.50. Right? We were doing these in real numbers. Right? So you can see that it took care of one division at a time, getting all the information for it, and moved on to the next one. Alright, so just kind of step you through that. Let's use the debugger here. Right, clicking over here sets what's called a breakpoint. That's what this red dot indicates. And then up above, you're going to use the local window debugger. If you click there, it's a little play button with the text next to it, and it starts the program. Alright, and let's bring the window over, and everything looks normal. The dot's still red and everything. So asking for the number of divisions, which is right above the red dot. So again, we'll go with 2 divisions, and then you see a break. You see an arrow now inside the red dot, a yellow arrow indicating the program has paused right now to start this outer loop. And I'm going to use the step buttons, right? The step over button, which is up in the menu bars in Visual Studio, or you can use just the F10 key. Alright, so when a step, so it executes that line, is started the for loop. Right, the division is at 0. Right, nums of division is what I entered is 2. So the next thing that's going to happen is going to prompt me for the number of sales for the division. Right, so if I bring up my window now, right, there's that prompt out there waiting. Right, it's flashing, but we're still braked. There you see the arrow is moving and telling you exactly which statement it's going to execute next. So I'm going to tell it to do the CN. The arrow goes away and the window came back. So now it's truly waiting for input. So I'll say there's 2 sales there again. Came back to the program over here, and you can see I'm stepping to it. Alright, and now it's going to start the inner loop. Enter for the number of sales. Boom, it's going to bring the window back saying, alright, enter something now. Again, I'm going to enter 1. Goes back over here. And you see it goes back to the inner loop. Alright, does not do anything with the outer loop yet. Stays in this inner loop, asking for the next piece of data. Alright, got that sale. Alright, so total sale now has the 2 in it because I entered 1 and 1. Sales is currently at 1. It's going to increment now. Sales is at, actually it was 0, then 1. Right, number of sales is 2. Right, so it ended. Sales is at 2 because it incremented at the top. Right, and now the loop ended. Now it's going to continue with the outer loop again. Right, and I'm just going to quickly step through this to show you it jumps back to the start of the outer loop and then steps back into it, prompting for the user all the input again, right, and so forth, going back into the inner loop. Right, and it'll stay in the inner loop again for 2 more passes. Just wanted to show you how it actually functions that way. Alright, let's go on to another example of nested loops, and what I'm going to do is comment out this one. And put this one in. It's a much shorter program, but it uses actually 3 nested loops displaying the time. And I'm just going to increment, scroll by real quickly on the screen, the hours and minutes of a day. Right? Not in real time, of course. It's just going to fly right through it. But a couple things to point out. You may have not seen this one, the cout.fill. And the fill, if you remember with going back when we talked about the set W, right? Here I have it set to 2 positions, meaning 2 characters are going to be displayed. But if currently hours is going to start off at 0, right, we want to be able to show 0, 0 as opposed to just a 0. So it being a single digit value, but it's putting it into it with a 2, rather than putting in spaces, it's going to put in a 0. Right, so you can make this any character you want. Right, if you didn't want spaces, you want some other character there. So this is going to give us the 0, or the leading 0 in front of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Same thing for hours, minutes, and seconds. Right? This fill applies to all the cout statements from this point forward until we change it. Right? So that's something new. So all this does is it starts the outer loop, then starts this middle loop, which then starts this inner loop, the most inner loop, and it stays here until it goes through all 60 seconds, then comes back out to the minute and does the next minute, then comes back into this one, does 60 seconds for that minute. Alright, it doesn't go back out to the hours until it does a full 60 minutes. So it stays in here 60 seconds, comes out to here, to the middle loop, right, 60 times, but this one runs 60 times for each minute, right? The same thing with the outer loop. So it's really a pretty big nested loop here, and executing quite a few times. Right, that most inner loop is executing quite a bit more, and you can see it there. The times are scrolling by. We're still in the 0 hour, just rolled over. The minutes are flying by, the seconds are flying by, and you just see this outer loop. Most outer loop is not changing very often, right? Which it shouldn't. It's got to go through every minute of every hour, and then every second of every minute within that hour. Right? And the program just continues up for 24 hours. Right? But the point was to show you that nested loops doesn't just necessarily mean 2. It can mean as many loops as you need to do what you need to do. And I also wanted to point out this nice little feature, which I don't believe we talked about in any other video. Again, this is the padding instead of spaces for the set W to use. And if I was to leave that out, let's just comment that out and you see the effect it has. Alright, so instead of having the leading zeros, we're going to see a lot of blank spaces, and the time is not going to be very uniformed. Oops. There we go, and you see that now it's just a 1. There's no 0, 2, 0, 1 or anything like that. Minutes and seconds are flying by so quickly that you may not notice it, but you can see it in the minutes right there. Right? So the padding's a little with the zeros just makes it look and present the output a lot better.